All right, so for today's demo, what I want to show you is how watsonx.governance is, first of all, integrated into the overall watsonx platform. So I'll be showing watsonx governance to you from the perspective of somebody who's using the overall platform. But I want you just to bear in mind that this is a useful way for me to demonstrate. But watsonx.governance is fully API driven as well. So anything that you can see that I'm doing with our own models on the watsonx.ai platform, you can also do with external models. So just think of this as like a useful way of showing the capabilities, but know that under the covers, you can actually accomplish all these same tasks with third-party models and tools. So I just want to make that clear from the get-go, because I understand that you're using ChatGPT and other tooling out there, and you'd like to leverage the governance capabilities of the watsonx platform. So that's how I'm going to go about demonstrating this for you today. And for the demo, I'm going to start today with the role of the model owner in a claims department of an insurance company. And so as the owner of the model, I have the responsibility to govern all of the AI use cases for the departments that I work for. We've identified, in this case, a new area of improvement by using a large language model to summarize incoming claim notifications so that our claim intake associates can understand the gist of a new situation quickly, right, without having to read through the full report of an insurance claim that's coming in. So for today's purposes, we're pretending we're an insurance company. So I have an insurance data set, and I have a large language model and a couple other assets to service this insurance company. So let's take a look here, kind of a mock-up of our claims processing application. So we have our insurance claim analyst page here. This might be the tool set that she's working from to process claims. And you can see that most of the claim requests here have already been processed. But I do have one here that hasn't been processed yet. So if I go into here and take a look, so here's one that has a transcript of a call between a claimant and the agent. And so we can read through this entire thing, or we can allow the AI that's built in here to go ahead and summarize the accident information. And you can see here that in this case, the LLM and the model that we've used has summarized the description of the accident, and it's a little bit light on detail. So what we're going to ask is to have our AI engineer go ahead and modify the prompt and then redeploy so that we can actually populate this with quite a bit more information. And of course, if you look through here, there's other use cases here where AI is being employed, but I think you get the gist. Why don't we go on to look at our watsonx platform and take a look at how this is all put together. So if I go into watsonx, this is our AI platform at IBM. We give you the ability to create, deploy, and govern not only generative AI, but also predictive machine learning type traditional AI models. So it's a full functionality platform for AI governance. I'll be demonstrating, of course, the integration of watsonx.governance with watsonx.ai. But again, everything here is API driven. So if you use a different platform, these capabilities of governance will apply. Right now, I can look at the list of the AI use cases that currently exist in the platform. In this case, we have one that's sitting here. This is a predictive machine learning use case. We can see some of the information here about it, the metadata that's exposed. So under the status column here, in this case, it tells us where this use case is in its life cycle. The inventory column is going to tell us which inventory the use case is registered into. And of course, you can use more than one inventory, for example, to separate out use cases from different business units or departments. And we can, of course, control who has access to which inventory. This speaks broadly to the configurability of the watsonx platform. Then over here in alerts, we can see if our use cases are operating as we intend them to, or if there are some alerts that we need to work on. In this particular case, this existing AI use case, everything's copacetic. And then lastly, I just want to point out the risk level column. This will tell us what risk level we've defined for each use case that we have in the platform. And to help with this assessment, the documentation for watsonx.governance actually contains a detailed list of the AI risks. These are the detailed risk levels in the atlas that we can assign to our different projects. These are the risks that would be associated with not only the inputs, but also the outputs of the foundation models. And you'll see that they're classified. So traditional, these are risks that we already know well from earlier predictive machine learning modeling that still apply today to generative AI. Then we have risk levels amplified. These are going to be the risks that are, with the advent of generative AI, they've obviously been increased. And then we have new, and these are risks that are entirely new when we're dealing with generative AI. I can click any of these particular risks if we want additional information about that particular risk. And so let's assume for now we've kind of done our homework with the guidance that's provided here. We've determined the risk factors and the level for our new project, and we want to go ahead and register that new AI use case in our inventory. If we now go and we start to create a new AI use case that's related to, you saw earlier, we were doing summarization of our new claims and it was a little bit light. So we're going to go ahead and create a new one. So we'll call this one new claim summarization. And this is a use case to summarize claim notifications using an LLM. I'm going to go ahead and classify that as medium. As I mentioned earlier, we have inventories. So I have a couple set up here. I'm going to go ahead and just choose an inventory to register this with. And then I want to basically set the status, and this has to do with tracking the deployments of our models as they go through their life cycle. But in this case, we'll say it's awaiting development. And then I can tag it with things to make it easier to find later. Just go ahead and say that it's related to a large language model. This is related to claims. And then I can go ahead and create this AI use case. And once that does get created, we should be able to see an overview. So the metadata has all been created. We have the overview here. And of course, I can update any part of this if I just go ahead and click on the edit icons. And then to get a peek at what's coming next, I could take a look at the life cycle. And okay, so we're obviously early in our life cycle. As this currently states, there are no AI assets tracked in this approach yet. That, of course, is going to change once the AI engineer creates the prompt template for this particular use case. Now, as a business owner, I'll be able to follow the AI engineer's work as the prompt template moves through its life cycle. And this, I would like to call out as kind of one of the first major capabilities of watsonx.governance. And that, of course, is the ability to create and manage AI use cases across the organization with different roles and abilities. Different folks can still see the AI use case as it works through its life cycle. Okay, so now I'm looking at this as a business user. Let's kind of switch gears a little bit. I'll put on a different hat. Let's take a look at this project from the AI engineer's perspective as they work on the prompt template in watsonx.ai and then associate that new prompt template with the use case we just created. So let me just go ahead and switch over to the AI engineer persona, if you will. And I'm going to actually just open this up in a new tab so we don't lose track of where we are here. Let's look at just the right one. LLM-based claims optimization, I think is the right one. So this is the project where our AI engineer has been working to realize our use case, summarizing claims. And of course, to save some time, I'm going to go ahead and open up a prompt that's already been created. So let's take a look at the insurance claim summarization. And again, I'm not going to give you a full demonstration of watsonx.ai, but I will highlight a few things that are important from a governance perspective. And I'm sure you can translate that fairly well into other interfaces that basically accomplish the same task. So let's take a look at the prompt info here real quick. So when the AI engineer created this prompt originally, they indicated that this prompt is going to be used for a summarization task. And this is, of course, very important from a governance point of view because different tasks are going to be evaluated differently. And I'll show you that when we get to the evaluation portion of this demo. But if we focus on the prompt itself, right here in the main screen, we could see that there's some instructions here given to the LLM. This is important information that I, as a business owner, would want to see as I evaluate the candidate prompt. And then you'll note here that there's no examples given, so this is clearly a zero-shot prompting situation. We can see up here that the AI engineer has used the FLAN UL220B foundation model. And of course, there's quite a few models and more besides what we see here in the recent tab that they could have chosen, both internal and also external hosted models. So once again, it's an important fact for me to know which model was utilized. If I take a look at our parameters, there's some important things here for governance. So for example, I can see here that the max tokens is set to 200. And of course, in LLM terms, a token is kind of like the core building block for generative AI. It's equivalent to approximately one word, or at least a part of a word. This tells me how long at most the summary can be. And as you know, we thought our summary in the earlier example was a little bit light on detail. So if we were to increase that, that might actually give us a larger summary. And of course, it's worth noting in this interface here, we have the ability to try our prompt. And you'll notice in the input section here that there's actually a variable entered there called input that'll contain, in this case, the full claim description that we're going to use from our claims application. So if I look at input, here's the default value. It's in small text, but in any case, it's a full text of an input example that we can utilize for trying this. So that's useful for us. If I go ahead and generate based on that input prompt, we should see an output as long as this is all running. Okay, cool. The thief crashed my vehicle into a tree, blah, blah, blah. So we can see the results of this prompt along with the claims description to the model. Of course, doing this by hand, one example at a time, that's going to be a bit cumbersome, but luckily watsonx.gov offers a far better way. So I can evaluate a prompt by providing a full data set to run a set of tests against. And this would be a good example of some of the automation that's built into watsonx.governance that's available to you, whether you're using watsonx local models or you're using external models. If I go ahead and take a look at evaluation here, so we can see generative AI quality. Because we're early in our life cycle, this is generally what we're going to have access to here until we get to the point where we've actually deployed this particular prompt and the model that's related to it. So in the very first portion here, I can see the LLM specific metrics that are appropriate for this particular prompt template. Now remember, I showed you that this prompt is meant for a summarization task specifically. So these are the metrics that are related to that task. And the tooling obviously selects the right set of metrics for this task type, as it says at the top of the screen. So that's just something I wanted to point out. Now, I mentioned there's an easier way to do evaluations over multiple examples. So I can point to some sample data to help evaluate this prompt. I grab insurance claim summarization test. So we know it's a CSV, so comma delimited is fine. For input, we want to go with insurance claim, and then of course for output, we'll go with summary. That looks good. We can evaluate this. As this runs through evaluation here, I'll point out the test data that I just uploaded contains both a claim description as well as an example summary that was created by some of our more experienced claims handlers. So this will help us evaluate how well the model performs in comparison to our experienced workers. And as this is building out on this evaluation results screen, we're going to see some of the results. I'm not going to go through everything here, but I'll just highlight a few things. The model health up here on the right side shows some technical performance metrics, including a token count. And of course, since most commercial models out there are paid for by the number of both input and output tokens, this is obviously a very important metric to keep track of. The first couple metrics here under our generative AI quality, obviously they're related mostly to PII and HAP. PII is our personally identifiable information. HAP is for hate, abuse, profanity. So we check for the presence of both of these, PII and HAP, in both the input and output data. In our example here, they're all doing quite well. They're none, so we're safe on those dimensions. At the very end, we do actually have one metric that's not meeting our expected criteria. So readability was scored at 52 and change, and it's a violation of a bit over 7 against what would be a lower threshold of 60. And of course, this means that the summaries that we're generating are a little bit difficult to read, or at least more so than we'd like them to be. They fall under that threshold. This kind of thing could be a good reason for the AI engineer to go back, work some more on their prompt, see if they can get these results to improve. For our purposes today, let's just assume that we're okay with this. We'll move on with our story. And so this is actually a good example of one of the other major capabilities of watsonx governance, and that's the ability to evaluate prompts and models at design time, not just after they've been deployed. Okay, so with that, there's one more task we want our AI engineer to do, and that's to associate this prompt template that we've been looking at with the use case that we saw earlier when the business owner had control. And that way, all of this information can be shared with all of our stakeholders. If I take a look at our AI fact sheet, you'll see that all the information we just reviewed is going to be recorded here in a fact sheet. You can think of this as kind of like the nutrition label for your AI models. And so as we kind of look through this, we can see all the pertinent information about this particular prompt and model. We can see the foundation model that was chosen. If I go ahead and look at the details of that, we can actually see the model card that the model creator provided. I can take a look beyond the model, the details, and I can see the task type and the actual prompt that we used. I can see the prompt parameters that were set by the AI engineer. I can see all the evaluation criteria that was run, test results. It's worth noting that this AI fact sheet is something that the AI engineer didn't have to do. This is all generated for you automatically. It saves a ton of time in the workflow of creating these models and prompts and actually documenting them with copy pasting everything into a Word document or something. So this is a super time saver, and it speaks to the auditability provided within this governance layer. Okay, so we know everything about this model. Let's go ahead and associate this prompt with the AI use case. And so I want to track this in the AI use case. And I want to use the new claim summarization use case that we just created a few moments ago. And we can choose the default approach, or we can create a new one. You can think of an approach as another way of organizing your models and your prompts within a use case. You don't have to do this in any prescribed way. It's more of a convenience for organizing things, but it does actually speak to the configurability that's available within watsonx.governance. It adds an extra layer of metadata so you can organize, especially when you have many complex models. In this case, since we're not including any examples in the prompts, we might put this prompt in something we call zero-shot prompting. We can configure the icons if we want to, but none of that's important. Go ahead and create a new approach. You can see it's selected by default. Let's continue on. We're on the model versioning page here. We'll just go with the default selection. Let's go ahead and add comments. Zero-shot prompt to summarize new claim notifications. Uses a plan model. Evaluation shows possible poor readability, right? So just some notes that we've taken along the way about this particular prompt. So this prompt template now is connected to our use case. So this would be the third major capability of watsonx governance. It's the ability to associate models and prompts with AI use cases. All right, so I've done this as the AI engineer. Let's go back as the business user. We can take a look at it now that I've done the work as the engineer. We'll go see what that looks like from this person's point of view. So now we can see we have a completely different approach here. I can see I have the zero-shot approach in the prompt template. I can see we are currently in the develop column here of our lifecycle. It's kind of the first step of the lifecycle, if you will. From here, I can also review all the details without having to go to the technical development side of the solution. And you'll also note the prompt template has a little red alert showing next to it. This is a sign to me as the business owner that one or more of the metrics have violated the threshold. So if I look at this tracked prompt template, I can now see exactly the same information as the AI engineer saw in their project. And I can see in the version comment with a reference to the threshold violation. I can jump right into the evaluation here. So at the top of this list, I could see the metric that has the alert. It always bubbles to the top. As we saw before, it's the readability metric that's a little low. From our point of view, as the business owner, it's not too bad. The typical education level of our claim handlers, I don't expect this is going to be a problem in practice. We can keep an eye on it, so it's good to have it documented here. For now, I can mark that this prompt is ready for validation testing. So I can go ahead and cancel out of that. Go over here, and I want to status. We're going to go ahead and say ready for AI asset validation. That sounds about right. Okay, that worked. Cool. So as I'm going through this life cycle, at any point, I can save a report of the use case, for example, to share with other stakeholders. So if I go to click here for export report, obviously I can choose between a number of different formats. I can choose whether I want a basic report or a full report. And if I were to export it now, it would save a file to my local machine with a date and time stamp. I'm not going to do that right now. I just wanted to basically show that we have the ability to take these projects as they move through their AI lifecycle, and we can keep, for auditing purposes, reports of their status at any given point in time. That's oftentimes useful, especially when you're working on teams and you're working with a good number of models that you want to keep track of. So just something to keep in mind that you can do. And again, all these reports and things like that, they still work through the API layer as well. So let's take a look at our AI use cases again. And we can see that we have an updated status here for my use case, ready for AI asset validation that we just set. And let's go ahead now and we'll track how the AI engineer, again, can now deploy the prompt template for more extensive testing. So again, now we're going to go back to AI engineer. Okay, cool. So now I'm an engineer again, remember. We're going to go back to our large language model-based claims optimization project. You'll notice here, this is the insurance claim summarization prompt template we used earlier. We can now see there's a little indication here that says that this is now being tracked in an AI use case. And then I can take this particular prompt and I'm going to promote this now to a deployment space. Okay, and I have a few deployment spaces created here. We're going to deploy this to our LLM deployment space. We do want to go there after we prompt it. Currents, good. All right, we'll go ahead and promote it. Okay, cool. So now we're on our deployments page. I'm going to create a new deployment. All right, so for the name, we'll call it LLM Claims Summary. We'll use the same thing. Well, that one. Valid, good. And that's fine. We don't need to create descriptions and stuff. We get the idea. Okay, cool. All right, so that's now deployed. We see a status indicating that it's deployed. We'll go back now as our business user here real quick. We're going to look at our new claim summarization use case again. And if I look at lifecycle, you'll note that not only do we have lifecycle information here showing under our develop, but we've skipped ahead in time a little bit. Now we're in the operation AI assets deployed to a space for operational purposes, meaning it's deployed to production. And we can see some indications here of everything being deployed. There should be a tag, right, pending evaluation here. So my deployment action is automatically reflected in the AI use case. There's really nothing I need to do for that. You might think of this as the fourth capability of watsonx.governance. It gives us the ability to track models and prompts throughout their life cycle. So we went from development stage and then we skipped ahead in time real quick, but now we're in production stage. Back to the engineer stage, if you will. Let's take a look at this deployed prompt. All right, so we're looking at API reference. We want to look at evaluations. Let's activate monitoring on this particular case. Remember, this is now a model that's deployed to production. So not only are we looking over the quality of our generative AI, but we're also monitoring this model in production. In this case, because again, this is a summarization task, one of the things that we're monitoring in production, in addition to generative AI quality, is also drift. We want to know if the results that are being produced by the model are experiencing some drift over time. Because in this particular case, we just deployed this prompt, there's not going to be any criteria yet to form an actual evaluation of drift and where we are with that. But obviously in time, after this model's been operating in production for a little while, we'd be able to monitor this prompt at runtime. And so this is like the fifth capability, if you will, and it's the ability to monitor models or prompts in production. So that's what I wanted to show you. And I know for your use cases, you'll be dealing with different data sets than what I'm looking at. But whether it's healthcare data or it's insurance data is inconsequential, really, when you're talking about deployment of a LLM generative AI model. I guess I'll just kind of wrap up. This is the summarization, really, of the use cases that we went over today. The ability to register and manage AI use cases, and that's more from a business user point of view. The ability to evaluate models and prompts at design time. And this is primarily going to be for things like generative AI quality metrics, and that's more from the developer or an engineer point of view. The ability to associate these models and prompts with use cases that were created by the business. The ability to track your models and prompts throughout their entire life cycle and know exactly where they are in that life cycle. And of course, the ability to monitor models and prompts at runtime. And while generative AI quality is still being monitored in production environments, you're also, of course, going to be looking for things like drift and bias and other metrics that are important for your organization. So that's pretty much what I have to show you guys. I'm sure there's some questions. If you guys have any questions, feel free to surface them. And if I know the answer, I'll certainly give it to you. And if I don't, it'll be something that we can take back to our product team and make sure we get answered for you.
So, what is the next step? Like, where do you want to go from here? Like, since we have seen the demo of governance, like, have you had a chance to look at the trial version of the governance, watsonx governance, or any questions? Like,
So Raj, I couldn't get the time to actually try the trial bonus. I'll try that from now because I didn't know how it's structured. So
okay,
I'll try that soon, and I will love to have another follow up on compliance.
okay,
And once we are done with that, I think we can begin integrating this system with our own sources also. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, that sounds great. So what we could do is we'll get in contact with the IBMer that Andrew referenced earlier
Mhm.
to demo the compliance piece, and then we could schedule time for next week to run through that, and then take a crack at the trial version and let us know what you
Mhm.
think. And we join on the next call and what questions you guys come up with, so we could really try to hammer out any of the last questions that you guys have.
Mhm.
And then the next thing that we'll have to do to continue forward is to register for Partner Plus.
I
I know.
did that. That's
Oh, you
already
did
done.
it?
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
And then did you apply for ESA? Did you hit
Uh,
that part as well?
no, I haven't done that part. I just did a registration.
Yes.
I'll search for ESA in that and do that. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. And if you just follow the instructions, because a lot of people get tripped up on it, but if you
Uh-huh.
follow that PowerPoint that I sent you,
Okay.
just slide by slide, it'll
Okay.
tell you exactly what you need to click, so then we don't run into any
Okay.
contractual problems, right? Because then
Okay.
it's a pain, and then you have to restart the process over again. So,
Okay.
uh, yeah, it'd be good if we just do it right the first
For
time.
sure. For sure,
Yeah,
Alex. Awesome.
awesome. Well, this is good. Thank you guys for your
All right.
time.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. Thank Andrew.
Yes.
yeah.
Thank Raj. Bye
Keep
bye.
in touch.
Thanks,
Thanks for
everyone.
having you
Thanks,
guys
Andrew.
today.
Bye. Bye.